You ever record a really long episode that you think went pretty well, then you upload it first to Patreon, and then they tell you there's no audio, and you double check, and sure enough, it did not record at all. You did all that talking and nothing recorded. No, just me? Well, that's what happens. I'm recording this again. Top 5 deer cartridges explained and compared. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics the right way with God Almighty at the center. Biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Blessed to serve you as host. First and foremost, I am a Christian, military, law enforcement, private security, contracting, competition shooting. And more germane to today's episode, I've been hunting since I was a boy. I've been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer and elk on the West Coast, bear and wolf, and I've even been a guided for all kinds of cool stuff, including bison. To establish some bona fides there for this episode. With that, let's talk about the top 5 deer cartridges. When we say hunting in America, we generally think of deer. There's lots of different kinds of hunting. There's lots of great hunting. But in general, when people think of hunting in America, they think of deer hunting. Usually whitetail, although this would pretty much apply to mule deer as well. But, deer-sized game. With that, I thought that I would talk about what I think are the top 5 deer cartridges. They come up over and over again in the field, in discussions, and what people have and actually hunt with, not what's being pushed in marketing hype. But what I would consider the top 5. And whenever you try to figure out what the top 5 are, it's pretty hard to pin down. But I'm going to pick what I think are the top 5 deer cartridges. Now, caveat, these are not the best ballistically. For every one that I give you, you can find one that's slightly better ballistically. I'm talking about cartridges that are commonly used in deer hunting, that are good, capable cartridges, that are good choices for deer hunting, that are sensible choices for a new hunter or a hunter, maybe their first, second, or third deer rifle. They're not looking to specialize and get the super specialized thing, but a good all-around deer hunting cartridge. And I think that a wise way, maybe not the only way, but a wise way to choose a rifle is to figure out the cartridge first. Even before that, maybe figure out the bullet and what you want it to do first, what attributes you want it to have. So with that, let's talk about these cartridges, kind of a little bit about their characteristics. And with that, I'm going to try and go in chronological order, meaning order in which these came to market. The first one, the 30-30 Winchester, or on older guns, it will be marked the 30 Winchester Centerfire, WCF. Been around since the 1890s. It's certainly taken a lot of deer. There's always an argument about which cartridge is taking the most deer. Who knows? I don't know that. But the 30-30 has certainly taken many, many deer. So have all the ones on this list. So the 30-30 is the oldest of the ones on the list today. It is also the most antiquated, the most antique. It's from the 1890s, and there was a big development between, let's say, the 1890s and the early 1900s. That was when we were getting giant leap forwards in technology. This one is a rimmed cartridge, the only one on the list. It's also highly tapered, and it generally, I know you can hand load in different guns, but it generally has round nose bullets or flat nose bullets. Although the Hornady's, they do make like a squishy, for lack of a better term, I forget what term they use, but a squishy kind of pointed tip so they don't detonate because they're generally in tubular magazines. This is a big distinction for the 30-30. This one, Now, I know there are exceptions, right? I know there have been single shots. I know that there are bolt guns like a Savage and 30-30. But in general, when you're talking 30-30, you're talking a lever action. The two most iconic are the Winchester Model 94 and the Marlin 336. I know there's a lot of other ones, and there's copies of both of those, like the Henrys or the Rossies. But in general, you're thinking lever action 30-30. Again, that's a generalization. I know you could probably tell me a story about somebody's uncle somewhere shot a deer at 200 yards running with a 30-30. But in general, I would suggest 150, 125 yards, even more conservative, 125 yards and in for decent range on whitetail deer. Now, despite what marketing hype and certain bullet manufacturers and stuff would have you believe in, YouTube glitterati with the giant OB scopes and fidget spinners for dudes on the top with all these modern widgets, I do believe that the average deer is taken well inside of 100 yards, especially on the East Coast. Like, I grew up there. You can't fool me. I grew up hunting, and I forget how many deer I took growing up. I thought I remembered my first deer, and I went home one day and was talking to family. They're like, no, you shot deer before that. That was not your first deer. So young you can't remember. So young that somebody else had to drag it out for me. So I shot a lot of deer back on the East Coast, and I don't think I ever shot one over 100 yards. So in those parameters, the 30-30 is fine, right? The 30-30 is fine for, again, inside 125 yards. You can push it to 150. It's fine for that. It's quite a bit slower than anything else on the list. We're generally talking low 2,000s feet per second, and we're generally talking 150 to 170 grain bullets. I'm going to try and keep these rough numbers today because I don't want to get into the ballistic nerdism. This is geared more towards a new hunter. Maybe you want to share this with somebody that's looking to get into hunting and they're trying to wade through all the marketing hype and ballistic coefficient nonsense. But that's your kind of breakdown on your 30-30. Now, let us move on to the next chronological one in the list. A giant leap forward in technology, the 30-06. A earlier iteration, the 30-03, but in 1906 it was fairly standardized. And this is a fully modern cartridge. It is a Spitzer bullet. So it flies through the air much better. It's much higher velocity than a 30-30. Same caliber, .308 caliber. Not to be confused with the cartridge. I know that's confusing, but the bullet diameter, 30 caliber, it's the same as a 30-30. It's going much faster. This one's going in the high. In general, with general bullet weights, you can break the 3,000, but in general, it's going high twos. A pretty vanilla load for the 30-06 is 150 at 28 something. So high 20s. Quite a bit step up in energy. Now, energy is important, but it's not nearly as important as bullet construction. I would also consider the 30-06 the most flexible, practical choice for North American game. I honestly think it's more than you need for deer, but so what? I mean, it doesn't have a crazy amount of recoil. When you start getting up into the magnums, you get a little bit more performance, if I'm being honest, but you get a lot more recoil. Just look at the recoil numbers and look at the cost of ammo. And 30-06 will kill anything in North America, handily. So, and there's a giant weight range. Now, in general, you're probably talking 150 to 180 grains. That's kind of the bulk of your ammo. But there's plenty of much lighter and much heavier bullets. 30-06 will stabilize, 100 grain to 220 grain. In fact, the 220 core locks are kind of, very storied in taking game. And they're I have quite a few of those. Now, the 30-06 is going to have an effective range out to what I would consider all ethical hunting ranges, which I would consider 450 to 500 yards. It's got plenty of energy out that far. If you use a wise bullet choice and bullet selection, it's a good all-around cartridge. One of the, big gun people of the 20th century, I forget who said it, but the quote was, "The 30-06 is never a mistake." So take that for what it's worth. I'd like to give credit where it's due, but I can't remember who said it. No, I did look it up, and I think Townsend Whalen was the one, the name that popped up a bunch. Do your own research on that if you're familiar with Townsend Whalen. He had another quote, I believe, that only accurate rifles are interesting. Anyway, moving on from quotes, whoever said it, I kind of agree with that. The 30-06 is never a mistake. It's a good all-around, very flexible cartridge. There's a lot of rifles, both new and old, chambered in it. It's got a lot of different grain weights. It's a full or a standard length action. A standard because the 30-06 was kind of the standard for a long time, and it's a standard length action. We'll get into short action later, but standard length action. You can get light bullets moving pretty fast. You can get heavier bullets chugging along, still at a pretty decent velocity. Okay, moving on chronologically, in 1925, we saw the .270 Winchester, .277 diameter, or 27 caliber for rough numbers. This is very simply, I know it may have come from a 30-03 case, but it's a neck-down 30-06, guys. It's a neck-down 30-06. You take the 30-06 and you neck it down to a smaller caliber. This is commonly done in wildcatting and manufacturing, so you don't have to redesign the bolt face, the gun is chambered in the standard length of the action. They neck it down to 27 caliber. And this gives you generally smaller projectiles in general, right? You could shoot 125 grain in your 30-06 and 130 in your .270, and that wouldn't be true. But in general, you're talking lighter bullets going faster. This one breaks to 3,000 feet per second. This one, kind of one of the ones that was really popular, was a 130 grain bullet at over 3,000 feet a second. So if you're a velocity guy, this one is king in the velocity department of the list today. And you can get more velocity, but this one gives you quite a bit of velocity without magnum stuff, meaning like extra recoil, extra inefficiency. It's a fairly efficient cartridge. It's certainly legendary, in part due to Jack O'Connor, for its ability to take a wide variety of North American game, and it's certainly a very good deer cartridge. This one is going to give you the best max point blank range, which I'm not a purist, but I'm kind of I do like the max point blank range philosophy. I use it a lot and have over the years. It's simple, it's fast, and I'm a spot and stalk and still hunter. It's kind of nice. I mentioned the 130 grain bullet. In general, you're talking 130 to 150 grain bullets in the .270. Not as flexible as a 30-06. But again, if we're talking deer hunting, it's plenty for deer. Heck, it's even a pretty popular elk cartridge. Next, we're going to bump up here to the 50s. In the 50s, we get the .308 Winchester, or the 7. They're slightly different, right? Check your rifle. You blow yourself up, it's your fault, not mine. If you're missing some fingers or a messed up eyeball or something. But for practical purposes, .308 Winchester 7.62 by 51 NATO. The commercial .308 is actually a bit hotter than the NATO for once. But the .308 Winchester, the military was looking to pretty much keep the performance of the old 30-06 load, which is 150 or 147 grain, at around 2,800. And they thought, can we do this in a shorter, smaller package? They did that. Now, this is not to say that the .308 is as powerful as the 30-06. It's not. But in the 150 grain weight, it comes close. And with better powders, they could get the initial velocity that they were so happy with in both the World Wars in a smaller package. If you're talking about hunting, honestly, I think that's kind of overblown. It doesn't matter a ton. The gun's going to be slightly lighter if you go with a short action. I said I get back to the short action. The receiver is going to be slightly shorter, which is a little bit less weight. The cartridges, you're probably not going to notice a difference as a hunter if you're carrying, 15 cartridges, even on a long backcountry hunt. For either one, you're probably not going to notice a difference in weight. For the military, if you're talking about landing craft with, thousands of rounds on it, yeah, that can make a difference. Or, an aircraft, like a helicopter, how much you can carry, yeah, kind of important. For you, not super important. But again, it is a short action. It's a shorter cartridge. It's more efficient. Has a reputation for accuracy. And it's plenty for deer. It is, like the 30-06, kind of more than enough for deer. But it's fine. It's fine for deer. It's fine for other stuff too. It's very versatile. It's probably the most flexible cartridge, period. I said 30-06 is the most flexible hunting cartridge, but for the most flexible cartridge, it's probably going to be the 308 because of the crossover tactical applications. There are a lot of tactical rifles like a Scar 17, an AR-10, a Springfield M1A that are chambered in 308 or 7.62 by 51 NATO, right? So if you're looking to just have like one rifle cartridge, be hard to argue against the 308. It's a good cartridge. Most of the things that I said about the 30-06 apply to this one, except for the heavier bullets. You can hand load, but in general, you're going to top out on the 180 grains with the 308, and generally that's it, whereas the 30-06 you can go to 220 grain. Now, does that matter for your average deer hunter? No. So, either one. Rough numbers again, you're talking 150 grain bullet at 2,800 feet a second, so upper 20s. It's a fully modern cartridge. This one's still the 1950s, so there's still a lot of classic rifles chambered in it. And there's a lot of new rifles chambered in it. There's probably slightly less classic rifles chambered in 308 and slightly more new production rifles being chambered in 308 than 30-06. But there's both. Right? You could get a pre-64 Winchester Model 70 in either one. You could get a brand new, Ruger American in either one. Or Tikka in either one. Especially if you're going to practice with cheaper ammo, I don't think this should be a consideration for hunting ammo. But if you're just looking to practice with bulk ammo, you're likely going to find cheaper 308. Although none of the ones on the list today are prohibitively expensive, right? None of them are like Magnum prices. None of them are like some weird oddball that you're going to end up that you have to spend, $50, $75 a box for. They're all pretty affordable rounds. But the 308 likely, if you did a search on AmmoSeek, is going to be the most affordable of these full-powered centerfire cartridges. And I guess the 30-30 is not a full-power cartridge. I'd call that an intermediate cartridge. But of the ones we're talking about today, it's likely the most affordable. A lot of that's going to be FMJ, which you should not use for deer hunting. But for practice, that's a consideration. Again, if we're talking about a crossover to like stockpile ammo, when ammo is easily available and fairly affordable, that's a consideration. So that's the 308. Now the new kid on the block, 2007, the 6.5 Creedmoor. Man, that's a contentious cartridge. A lot of people love it. A lot of people love to hate it. Guys, it's a good cartridge. It ballistically does everything that a 260 does. Nobody was hating on it. Didn't have the controversy of this. It's no worse than a 6.5 by 55 Swede, and people love that cartridge. That said, this really isn't anything special for deer hunting. This is really nothing more than, it's a more practical choice, but it won't do anything practically for a deer hunter that a 6.5 by 55 Swede that came out in the 1890s won't do. But it's a more logical choice because there's way more ammo available for it than that. And there's a lot more rifles in America chambered for it than that. It's really the only rifle cartridge that's come out in the last 50 years, and they pump out several every year. It's really the only one that's taken a significant portion of the market. I've heard that in some years it even surpassed the sales of 308. That's impressive. Now, this was developed as a target cartridge, which is fine, right? The 30-06 and the 308 were developed as military cartridges. They weren't designed primarily for hunting cartridges. That doesn't make it bad, but a caveat I'll throw in is a lot of the ammo for the 6.5 Creedmoor is going to be target ammo. Target ammo is for targets. I'm not saying it won't kill something. It certainly will kill something. If you punch a hole in it, it'll die. But it wasn't designed for that, and it's probably suboptimal. Perhaps that is part of the reason for the, let's say, wishy-washy reputation of the 6.5 Creedmoor. But if you get a good hunting bullet and you keep it to good, what I consider practical, ethical hunting ranges, it's not a shall, you do you. But let's say inside 450, 500 yards, with a good construction hunting bullet on deer-sized game, it's fine. You're not giving anything up. And it's probably the most efficient, even more efficient than the 308, the most efficient of the cartridges. It's a neck down, not 308, but 30 Thompson Center, which is one of those new cartridges that come out year after year after year that kind of died. But the 6.5 Creedmoor did not die. It's a bit shorter than the 308, but it generally has a longer bullet, so it fits in a short-action 308 style. For this, it's moderate velocity. I think people that don't know much about ballistics think since it's a good long-range target round, that it's a flat-shooting cartridge. It's not flat-shooting. It's one of the least flat-shooting, with the exception of the 30-30 that we've talked about. That's not why it's good at long range, since the use of a bunch of computers in shooting and rangefinders, it's a known distance. It's a known variable. You just have to adjust more. It's not a big deal. It's not a long-range cartridge because it's flat shooting. It's a good long-range cartridge because it's mild recoil and it's efficient. And both those things, mild recoil and efficiency, that's not bad for a deer hunter either. Again, don't go for these ultra-long, high BC target bullets, but if you get a good hunting bullet, that's great. For this, you're generally talking 120-ish to 140-ish grain bullets. And despite what some naysayers may say, it's enough for deer. It's plenty enough for deer. Again, look at the numbers of it versus a 6.5 by 55 Swede, and that's taken a ton of Scandinavian moose. It's fine for deer. It really is. If you choose bullet construction and bullet choice, which is outside the scope of today's discussion, but that's way more important. So if you get a good hunting bullet and keep it to ethical hunting ranges, it's plenty for deer. And it's a very, very popular round. It has taken a big share of the market, which means that ammunition and firearms are widely available and affordable. And that's important for today's discussion if you're looking at a dedicated deer rifle. Again, this is not maybe the best ballistically. This is not the most cutting edge rounds. These are just what I consider 5 of the top deer cartridges. Not even necessarily my favorites, but just really good solid choices if you're looking at a deer rifle in 2026. Also, Federal just announced the 6.5 or the 6.5 Plus Peak, which is a souped up 6.5 Creedmoor with quite a bit more velocity. Now, do you need that for deer hunting? No, but it's something I thought you should be aware of since it's recently come out. And that should yield ballistically fairly similar performance to a cartridge we didn't talk about, the 6.5 PRC. Perhaps even better in shorter barrels. So hopefully this was helpful and a getting started point for picking out a good deer rifle. And all of these work, they're all fine. All right, do you want to hunt with a classic lever action? I know there are lever actions that fire the modern cartridges, like a Browning BLR or a Henry Long Ranger. I know that, but I'm talking classic. Because I think a lot of the reason people hunt with the lever action is they want that classic nostalgia. Well, it's probably going to lean you towards the 30-30. Are you mostly going to target shoot and then maybe hunt deer every once in a while? Then your logical choices for that out of these would be the 6.5 Creedmoor and the 308. Are you hunting more open country with max point blank range as your kind of philosophy? Then that might skew you towards the 270. Do you want a one-and-done hunt anything in North America gun? Well, that's probably going to lead you more towards a 30-06. With that, guys, I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you do. Your tactical verse of the day. It's going to be hard to pick one of these, but one of my favorite proverbs: as a ring of gold and a swine's snout, so is a lovely woman who lacks discretion. As a ring of gold and a swine's snout, so is a lovely woman who lacks discretion. And then also a very good one on women: whoever finds my mistake, I mixed those up there. But getting back to the verse, an excellent wife is the crown of her husband. I've been blessed by God with a very good wife and a very good marriage, and I don't want to take that for granted. I know that that's a gift from God, and I also know that from my dating years, that first proverb is true. So I hope that all you guys out there that are married have a good marriage, and I hope that all you guys out there looking find a good wife. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.